Amelia had always believed she had time. Time to visit, time to call, time to mend the distance that had grown between her and her father. But life, with all its distractions, had a way of pushing the important things aside. She had chased success, moved to new cities, built a life that looked perfect on the outside, but deep down, something was missing. Then, one phone call changed everything. Her father was sick. Time was no longer on her side. Rushing back to her childhood home, she found herself overwhelmed by memories, the warmth of his laughter, the gentle strength of his presence, the countless moments she had taken for granted. Now, as she sat by his bedside, watching the man who had once been her hero grow weaker with each breath, she realized the weight of all the unsaid words. But even in his final moments, he had one last lesson to teach her, a lesson about love, about regret, and about the importance of never waiting for someday. This is a story about loss and healing, about the power of words and the promises we make to ourselves and those we love. It is Amelia's journey to rediscovering what truly matters, before it's too late. So let's settle down and enjoy our story. Please like, share, and subscribe. The rain drizzled against the hospital window as Amelia sat beside her father's bed, holding his frail hand in hers. The steady beep of the monitors was the only sound in the room. He had always been strong, her rock, her protector, but now, he was slipping away, his breath shallow, his skin cold. She had spent years chasing success, moving from one city to another, always telling herself she'd visit him soon. But time had a cruel way of slipping through her fingers, and now, she was realizing too late that soon had become now, and now was almost gone. Her father stirred, his eyes fluttering open. A weak smile spread across his lips as he looked at her. "You came," he whispered, tears burned behind Amelia's eyes. "Of course, Dad. I'm here." He exhaled shakily. "I kept your letters," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every single one." Amelia's breath caught. She hadn't written to him in years. "Letters? The ones you sent from college, from your first job, even the ones you never mailed. I found them in your old room before you left. I read them over and over, especially when I missed you." Her heart clenched. The letters she had written in moments of loneliness, fear, and doubt, letters she had never found the courage to send, he had found them. He had read her unspoken words, her silent cries, her love hidden in ink. "I'm sorry, Dad. For not coming sooner, for not," he squeezed her hand weakly. "Don't be sorry. Just promise me, don't let time slip away. Love loudly, Amelia. Don't wait for someday." She nodded, choking back a sob. "I promise." His eyes closed, a peaceful smile resting on his face. And as the beeping slowed, then faded into silence, Amelia held onto his hand, onto his words, onto the promise she would never break. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world had changed. And so had she. The days that followed felt like a blur. The funeral was quiet. Just a handful of close friends and neighbors who had known her father for years. Amelia stood by his grave, the fresh earth damp beneath her feet, her fingers tracing the edges of the folded letter she had placed inside his casket. The letter she had finally written, telling him everything she had been too afraid to say in life. When she returned to her childhood home, the silence was deafening. His chair in the living room remained untouched, the scent of his aftershave lingering in the air. Every corner held memories, his laughter, his words of encouragement, the sound of his worn boots against the wooden floors. She spent the first few nights awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying old conversations in her head. She kept expecting to hear his voice call out to her, to find him reading a newspaper in the kitchen, sipping his morning coffee. But the house remained empty, just like the space in her heart. One evening, while sorting through his things, she found a small wooden box in his bedside drawer. Inside were all the letters she had written. Some were yellowed with time, others crisp and untouched. At the very bottom, there was one last envelope, addressed to her in his careful handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened it. My Amelia, if you are reading this, it means my time has come. But don't grieve for too long, my love. I have lived a good life, and you were my greatest joy. I know you. I know how you carry guilt like a heavy coat, how you hold back words and emotions, thinking there will always be time later. But life is fleeting, and love is meant to be spoken, not just felt. So, my dear, live. Love. Don't be afraid to tell people how much they mean to you. And most of all, forgive yourself. I already have, with all my love, Dad. Tears blurred her vision as she clutched the letter to her chest. That night, for the first time in years, Amelia sat down and began to write again. Not out of regret, but out of love. She wrote letters to old friends, to people she had lost touch with, to the ones she had left behind in the pursuit of a life that suddenly felt too distant. And she made a promise, not just to her father, but to herself. She would love loudly. She would never wait for someday again. Months passed, and Amelia slowly began to heal. She visited her father's grave often, sometimes sitting in silence, other times reading aloud the letters she continued to write. It brought her peace, knowing that in some way, he was still listening. She started calling people she had lost touch with, setting aside time for coffee, lunch, or even just a short conversation. Each connection brought her closer to the life she had once let slip away. She traveled, not for work, but to see the people she had always meant to visit. She reconnected with her mother, whom she had grown distant from after her parents' divorce. They sat for hours, reminiscing about old times, healing the wounds they had both carried in silence. One afternoon, she returned to her childhood home and sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The house was no longer just a place of memories. It had become a space of healing. She found an old photo album tucked away in a cabinet, filled with pictures of her childhood. Her father's smile, always warm, filled the pages. She ran her fingers over the photos, letting the memories flood back. One crisp autumn morning, she walked to her father's grave with a bouquet of his favorite flowers. She sat down and read him another letter, just as she always did. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm still keeping my promise. And I always will." The wind rustled through the trees, and for the first time, she truly believed that love never fades. It simply changes form, and with that, she walked forward, not leaving the past behind, but carrying it with her in the most beautiful way. Conclusion. Amelia's journey was one of love, loss, and transformation. Through her father's final lesson, she learned to embrace the present, express her feelings openly, and cherish every relationship in her life. Though grief remained, it no longer held her back. It became a guiding force, reminding her every day to live fully, love deeply, and never wait for someday.